recording this now because a bunch of people asked me to. So, and then, sure, that's fine. Okay. I don't know how that works. I hope there's no bad words. Sometimes when they do the live transcription, they do bad words. We shall hope. All right. I want you guys to put any questions that you have in the chat for me, please. Just go ahead and fill up the chat, or you can say them out loud. So what do you guys want to talk about today? We have 1 hour, and what I was going to do is put up the practice exam, but just make sure you guys are comfortable with it. So. No questions? Nobody has any questions? That'll make this a short session. Oh, here we go. Just a time delay. Okay. Tegan, can we go over some of the word problems on the practice exam? Yes, I understood, but 1 to 6, but 7 to 10. Is that on the exam, Tegan? I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. Let's save, stop sharing. Okay. Can we go over the last page? Okay, questions 7 through 10. Yes, we can. And let's rotate that. Okay. All right, that's it? No, 2 questions? All right. All right. Let's see. So the questions are, so put your questions in. Okay. All right. So we're going to, so let me share my screen. We got one more chat. Okay. Does anyone else have any more questions to go over? Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at that. All right. So questions 7 through 10. So I always recommend, I know a lot of you think really fast, but I recommend you do this. Okay, so at the beginning of the year, Vasquez Company had total assets of 700 and total liabilities of 600. And answer the following questions. Okay. Right. Okay, so let me share my screen. Can you guys see that problem there? So let me, what I do is I set this up, assets equals liabilities plus stockholders' equity. Okay, so I'm going to do a new share. So it says beginning of the year. All right, so let's do a new share. Are we able to have a piece of paper? No. You mean for scratch? Conwar Beer. So Conwar Beer asks, are we able to have a piece of paper for the exam? So, oh my goodness, well, those transcripts are just great. All right. Hope you guys are not reading them. Hold the paper up and put your name on it in pen. Okay, and then at the end of the exam, hold it up again, okay? And that would be okay. All right, and just use it for scratch paper, all right? Okay, all right. So let's do this one real quick. So this is how I show, can you guys see my Excel screen here? Tell me yes if you can. I will wait to hear you say yes. Yes, thank you, Conor. All right, so I laid this out using the accounting equation. So assets equals liabilities plus stockholders' equity across the top. On the left-hand side, I show time. So this, or a point in time. So this is beginning of the year. And the problem says Vasquez had total assets of 700,000. And this equal sign still holds. And it had total liabilities of 600,000. I'm just going to abbreviate that as 700 instead of 700,000. Okay, so then you guys have to solve for stockholders' equity at the beginning of the year. So put it in the chat. What's stockholders' equity? Kanwar Beer, correct. Tegan, correct. Anusha, correct. Okay, so it's 100,000, but I'm just going to use 100 for this. Okay, then the problem says if during the year, so let's just write the word during here. Now, I know that some of you are really good with doing algebra in your head, but I strongly encourage you to lay the problem out like this. Okay, during the year, assets decreased 80,000. Okay, now remember for every row that we have here, it has to balance. So then we're going to say assets decreased 80,000. And then now over here, they're saying, oh, but revenue, which revenue doesn't seem obvious that it's part of the accounting equation because it's part of the extended accounting equation. So for revenue, we go plus revenue. I'm going to make these rows a little skinnier. And then that's kind of repeating what we had for the worksheet at the beginning of chapter 3. Okay, and minus expenses. And then we also have minus dividends, okay? These problems aren't going to have a lot of dividends in it. Okay, so they're saying, hey, during the year, revenue was 200,000. And expenses were 90,000. And there were no dividends, okay? So that's just a big 0, okay? And then they're saying, what is liabilities at the end of the year? Figure it out, okay? So EOY, end of the year. And they're saying, give us this number. So I want you guys to set that all up like that. When you, I mean, I don't need it, but I would strongly encourage you to set it up that way. So at this point in time, you could add up 700 minus 80, and that's going to be assets at the end of the year are going to be 620. Liabilities, you don't have enough information yet. And again, this all has to balance. Stockholders' equity, we know the beginning balance is 100. But what do we do with this? Does anybody know what we do with this information? So you guys did it with your Monopoly. So remember when you did, we always do the income statement first, then the statement of retained earnings, and then the balance sheet. So the assets, liabilities, and stockholders' equity are part of the balance sheet. So 200 minus 90 is 110. That's going to be our net income. Net income is part of the retained earnings statement. So this is going to impact, let's just do this here. Right here, the revenue minus expense is going to be added to stockholders' equity. So we can say that during the year, stockholders' equity went up 110,000. And that means stockholders' equity at the end of the year is 210,000. Now, at this point, you can solve for liabilities. Liabilities is going to be equal to 620 minus 210, okay? So it's going to be 410, all right? So that's number 7. Okay. So who asked for that? Tegan, you asked for that. Does that make more sense now? So lay out each row in order. So, okay. All right. So what about number 8? Number 8, is during, now they don't give you beginning of the year. Okay. All they say is, now let's just use, let's move that down. I'm just going to copy that down. Okay. They just say during the year. They don't tell you the beginning balance. Okay. During the year, steel company's assets increased 25,000. Okay. And remember, it all has to balance. Liabilities decreased 15,000. During that same year, the investors invested an additional 30,000, and the company paid dividends of 15,000. What must have been the company's net income for 2017? So Tegan's saying, you're saying the ones without the beginning of the year are the hardest. Okay, so it's not asking you for this balance, it's asking you for what net income was. And in the previous problem, we were able to calculate net income. We knew revenue and we knew expenses. But this one, now you could right now solve for the total here. What is this number here for stockholders' equity? If assets are 25, Tegan, yes? Anybody else? What is total stockholders' equity? If assets went up 25, liabilities went down 15, what does the net change in stockholders' equity have to be? So here's how we do it. If we want to solve for X here, so we're going to move that 15 to the other side. So it's minus 15, so we would add it, then we'd add it to the 25, and that would be 40. Okay, so 40 minus 15 is going to be 25. Now we're not solving for the total net change, we're solving for net income. So we need to say this net change we know is partly because we had additional investors. So common stock would have been part of it, of 30,000. That does not add up to 40. They paid dividends of 15. Okay. And then the question is, what is net income? Okay. So we have an X situation here. 30 minus 15 plus what is 40? Let's see, we have Sanskar says 25. Yeah. So if you add up these three numbers, let's make sure you're right. Or Sanskar, I guess. Yeah. All right. So these are major algebra problems. Okay. So the answer is 25. Okay. Do you guys want to go through all of these, or you want to move on to anything else? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Oh, good, Anusha. That's a good question. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So let's go. All right. So let's look at all right. So yes, Anusha, yes, you're going to be looking at total revenue or total net or net income. Okay. So quickly tell me, what statement is this? Is this an income statement, retained earnings, or balance sheet? Based on what you see inside this statement. And And why is it that? So what kind of statement is this? This is an income statement because it shows revenues and expenses. Yes, Tara. So don't second guess it. Look at the content on your statement. So revenue, we haven't talked about cost of goods sold very much, but it's there. Also sometimes called cost of sales, cost of revenue means the same thing. Gross profit will hit in chapter 5, and then there's all your expenses. And then down here, net income. Okay. So you're only going to be evaluating net income or total revenue. Okay, Anusha. And then I gave you the, I released the solutions already. So I want to make sure you guys understand how to calculate net change. Okay, so let's take some numbers from here for net income. So let's do the net income numbers, and we've got 270,556, we've got 184,063, and 121,847. Okay. And then let's see if I can, I want to change screens again. All right, so we're going to do a new share. I want to make sure you guys understand how to do this. Nope, that's not it. New share. There we go. All right. So there's net income from that Coldwater Dairy. Okay. So to calculate, so the question says, what is the trend? Okay. So this is the year ending, and I know we went over this in class yesterday, but I want to make sure my online students know this as well. Okay, so we've got the 3 years there. What can you tell me about this trend? I want a one-sentence trend. Is this trend favorable, unfavorable, steady, no change, or erratic, inconsistent? So is it favorable, unfavorable, steady, inconsistent? Okay, take a look at the dates. Take a good look at the dates. So is it better or worse? Yes. Yes. Increasing. So Anusha, I'm going to call you out, and I don't mean to make you embarrassed. That is an extremely common mistake. So Anusha said, oh, it's getting worse, but no, then she corrected herself. No, it's getting better. And so watch the dates. Some companies put the most recent date on the left side. Some companies like Google put it on the right side. So just check the dates really closely. Okay. So the oldest date here, 121, a year later, 184, a year after that, 270. Definitely a favorable trend. Okay. So then how would you get, and at the bottom, so that would be your first sentence, and you've got it in the practice exam solution. I think that's what I said there. I hope so. And then the question I have for you is, do you know how to calculate percent growth and all of that? If so, put it in the chat and tell me what the percent growth is. So, because that's going to be your evidence. Or do you want to know how to calculate percent growth? And then Conwar Beer, are the exam questions going to be very similar to the practice exam? Or are we also going to have any multiple choice questions? Oh, golly. Not multiple choice like we do the quizzes, mostly pencil work. I mean, you're going to have to, for my online students, you're going to have to type out your answers. And please do not stress about this. I really mean it. if you are doing a balance sheet for me, you're just typing the balance sheet. So you'd say your name, balance sheet, and then the date, and then just type like you would on your computer. Don't worry about indentations. Just do the indenting if you can, or just do the title, then the accounts, then the subtotal. It can all be in one column. Okay. When I've done my unit exam online before, I've had students who have spent a lot of time on the exam trying to put all this indentation in and make it beautiful, but just put your data in one column. You don't have time to do a lot of formatting. Okay. All right. So is it exactly like the practice exam? No, there are questions I'm giving you that are not on the practice exam. So it's just testing your knowledge. The practice exam, if you really are comfortable with it, I can pretty much say you'll probably pass the exam. You may not get an A, but the total exam has some questions that are a little bit of stretch on it. So if all you do is study the practice exam and you don't like give yourself different kinds of problems, go back and look at your homework, go back and look at the back of chapter questions. And the nice thing about the back of chapter questions is they have the solutions in them as well. Okay. All right. So can you guys give me, back to my problem, can you give me the net change and then the percent change for these years? So you can see that we went from 121 to 184. What was the net change here? How many, what's the dollar difference? Anusha, not the net income percent. I'm talking about the net change. How much did the 2012 net income grow compared to the 2011 net income? So imagine you made 121,000 last year. Elliot, yes, it will be recorded. It is recorded. So you can pick up the beginning part. Okay, so what you want to do to get the net change is you want to take 184 minus 121. So the net income grew 62,216. Okay. Does everybody understand how I got that? Say yes in the chat or no in the chat. One yes. Two, oh, great. Okay. How much did it grow 2013 compared to 2012? Oh, and bring a calculator, a good calculator. Do not use your cell phone as a calculator. When you take the exam, hold up your calculator. Let's see, 86,493. That's probably right, Christine. Yes, okay. So how do we calculate percent? So the formula for percent growth is, I'll just type it out here. This year minus last year divided by last year. Okay, super important to use last year. So we're going to take 62,000, which is 184 minus 121 divided by, okay, now in Excel it defaults here. So I gave you guys your monopolies back. I mean, online, your monopolies are graded. So how do we get this? This is a decimal. How do we get a decimal? How do we get a decimal into a percent? What's the math for that? How do I turn this number into a percent? Multiply by 100. So I'll do that like that. And then I want this to be a percent. So I want 0.6. I'm sorry, I want this to be a percent with 2 decimals. So it's going to be 51%, 0.06. Okay. All right. So, oops, messed that up. Hold on. Okay. So multiply by 100. Okay. So can we do it over here? Can you guys do it here? What's the percent growth for 2013 compared to 2012? So type in the formula in the chat. What's the formula for the percent growth? We know what the net change is. So this year minus last year, that's the numerator. So what do we divide by? Yes, that is correct, Tara. Anybody else? Okay. So we'll do that as a decimal first. And we're going to get the 46.99. And then we're going to turn it into a percent. And I want 2 decimal points with that. Good, Christina, that's correct. Okay. So I want you to, so now we've done all the number crunching. We know the dollar changes and we know the percent changes. And you could even go and say, what was the percent growth for 3 years? You could do that if you wanted, but let's just talk about here. So in my solution that I released, I say, let's see, total revenue on net income. You know, you can say it several ways. The 3-year trend for cold water dairy was favorable. You could say, and even be more specific and say, the 3-year trend, 2011, 2013 was favorable. And then you have to get into your evidence. So I told my students yesterday on campus, if I'm standing in the elevator with you and you say, hey, I just looked at the financials for Coldwater Dairy, and I say, tell me about it. We've got 30 seconds. And you say the 3-year trend was favorable for 2011 to 2013. You have to start with that sentence because then your evidence tells me what supports it. Okay. So I know this is really dry writing, but this is what I want from you right now. I don't need you to look at the line items of the income statement to explain anything. I just want you to look at this at a very, very high level. Okay. So the 3-year trend was favorable, and then talk about what happened. So I think in my solution, I just said net income. Oh, but you know what I left off of my first sentence? The 3-year, tell me what trend we're talking about. Net income trend was favorable. Okay. And then you can go on to the detail. Net income increased, and then just use your numbers from above from 2011 to 2012. And then give me the dollars, an increase of 62,516. And then do the same thing for the next year. Net income increased, can't spell today, 46.99% from 2012 to 2013, an increase of 86 or 93. Okay. Does that make sense? So now tell me you really are paying attention and tell me that, do you have something you want to tell me about these 2 years of activity. What could you say about it? And you can come off mute if you want to say it. Is this a good trend overall? Overall, we've said it is a good trend, but now that we get into the year 1, year 2, year 3 trend, is it a good trend? Is there any other comment you want to make? So it grew 51.06% the first year, and then the second year it grew 46.99%. Now both of those growth rates are phenomenal, but I think it's, if you want to show me you're paying attention, you want to add the growth rate declined slightly, but is still strong. Okay. All right. So just show me that you know what's going on. So that's 4 sentences. I think I had 2 or 3 sentences in the solution. So you want to, sentence number 1, tell me what you're going to tell me. That's right, Anusha. It does count. So Anusha is saying, I don't know if this will count, but the percentage increase reduced. It does count because, I mean, it's very rare a company's net income will grow 50% like that, and then almost 50% the next year. But it should be noted that the growth rate seems to be slowing down. Okay. And I would bet you for net sales, it's going to be a similar trend. Okay. So if I look at net sales, it did the same thing. The first year's growth rate was higher than the second 2 years growth rate. Okay. All right. Okay. So know how to calculate net change, percent growth, and then use that in your evidence. Use the percent and the dollars in your evidence. Okay. All right. What other questions do you guys have about the exam or about the practice exam? So Anusha's asking if they're going to be multiple choice. Not multiple choice like you have on the quizzes, no. So don't forget to do your account ID. So did anybody do the account ID? Let's see if anybody did it. Let's just take a look. Do we need to include descriptions like issuance of common stock in exchange for cash? Let's see. Let me check, Elliot. I have to check because I don't remember. I am looking to see if I make you do descriptions. You do not need to do journal entry descriptions on the exam. It doesn't ask you for them. Okay. But you won't be marked wrong if you do them. So a question, dividends would not be considered as a debit under the balance sheet. So dividends are not on the balance sheet. So let's take a look at the account ID because I want to see if you guys have done it. So let's see. I want to do it as a class. So you have the way the account ID works, it really should help you do the It's kind of like flashcards. It helps you with knowing the debit balance and the credit balance and what statement things go on. But I can't find it here, so let's look. Oh, you've all done it. Okay, so you guys know that that's there. All right. So what I want you to do, let's see, is I want to go to that page in the exam. Let's just do that. Okay. And it's kind of a long page of, here we go. Let's do that. Share screen. Okay, here we go. All right, do we need to include descriptions? Is a TI-84? No, you may not use a TI-84 calculator. Get a simple calculator. I find some of the journal entries to be confusing. Could we go over with the more difficult ones? Sure. All right, so let's take a look at all of these accounts. So you really want to know your accounts here. And if you look in the back, I know a lot of you are using an online book, but if you go to your online book, at the very back of it, there are some awesome things that can help you with all of this stuff. So at the very back of your book, there is a, see if I can, chart of accounts that you can use. And if you have access to a printer, it's a nice little sheet that shows you how everything works. They also have a list of account titles and classifications. It just is a quick, ready guide for some of that. Okay, so if you were to go down this list, I put every account that I can think of that you would know up to this point. Accounts payable, receivable, supplies, building, etc. Most of the accounts are on the income statement or the balance sheet. Know whether it's a debit or credit, just like you did for the account ID quiz. But which account, put it in the chat, which account is neither on the balance sheet or the income statement? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Brienne, correct. Christina, correct. Anusha, correct. Yeah. Elliot, correct. It is dividends. So you will never, 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 never see dividends on the income statement or the balance sheet. Okay. So every other account has to go somewhere, and it only goes it only goes in one place. So accounts receivable is only going to be on the balance sheet. It's an asset. It's a current asset. So be sure to put your balance sheet in as a classified balance sheet. Now, if you have forgotten how to do a classified balance sheet, go to chapter 2, and it's about page 4 in, and there is a really nice sheet. Again, do not have your book open during the test. I will be looking at all those videos. But while you study, use it. Franklin Company, and it shows the balance sheet, the classified balance sheet, and it's a great resource. Okay. All right. So Tegan wants to go over journal entries. Does anyone else want to go over anything else? So put it in the chat if you do. So. All right. So stockholders invested 100, should dates be written as October 26? Either way is fine. I think it's easier to do 10/26/21. So can I tell you how many questions will be on the exam? No, I don't remember, and I probably wouldn't tell you, but for a paper exam, it's 13 pages long. That I can tell you. So it will take you about 2 hours to do the exam. So do not, online students, the exam shuts down at 10 p.m. or 10:15. So if you started at 10 o'clock, it will stop at 10:15. It won't just let you go 2 hours. So you want to start the exam at the very latest around 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. Okay. All right. Did I answer everybody's questions? So for a journal entry, okay to put 10:21, just 10:21, 21, something like that. Okay. Let me just put it in here. Yeah. Be sure to put dates in your JEs. 10, 26, 21 is okay. All right. What else? What other questions? All right. Okay, so I am not even going to insult you by asking you to do journal entry number 1, but what is the journal entry for number 2? Put it in the chat. Hired a secretary starting tomorrow to be paid $7.50 per week. Good. Okay. No entry. Why? Why, Anusha? Why no entry? Because this does not affect anything. It's not an exchange. He or she is going to work for you, but they haven't even started yet. So there's no exchange, therefore there's no economic exchange, economic transaction. We don't have to do it. Okay. October 6th, purchase medical supplies for $2,000, paid $400 in cash, the remainder to be paid in 2 weeks. Now I want you guys, everyone, to put in the chat how you would do a journal entry, particularly my online students. How would you set this journal entry up for October 6th? Go ahead and type it in the chat. I'll give you 2 minutes to do that, because that's exactly what you're going to be doing on the exam. Put the whole, yeah, okay. Yeah, don't hit enter yet. Do you guys mind if I eat a Reese's while I'm sitting here? I passed the Halloween basket and I couldn't help myself. Is it okay? Thanks. Okay, we're doing transaction October 6th. Go ahead and type your answer into the chat. Type your journal entry. Christina, you're correct. Now, I would indent the liability, but I don't know that Zoom lets you indent anything. Let me see if I can indent it back at you. How did you do that? All right. As soon as I hit. Yeah. Cannot do it. Christina, tell me how you did that. If you hit enter, didn't your chat send? Could not really do any indents. Okay, that works. All right. That is my experience. Okay. So debit supplies or medical supplies, 2,000. Credit cash, 400. Credit accounts payable, 1,600. Oh, and Christina, the only other thing what I would ask you to add is the words credit and debit. Okay, so let's do this. Yeah, all right, let's do this. Share. Okay, let's say you're just randomly typing this in for a test. So this is how I'd want you to type it. Debit or deb, and then you can just do like a little dash or something. Supplies 2,000. You don't have to put the comma in there. And then indent, cred, cash. You kind of take it over 400. Cred, accounts payable. And I'm okay with you guys abbreviating when you do this. Don't make it too abbreviated. I want to make sure I can read it. So this is a perfectly acceptable answer. Debit supplies 2,000, credit cash 400, credit accounts payable 1,600. Okay. Now for my on-campus students, you're going to have a regular journal entry form, so it's not going to be a big deal. But for my online students, do not get hung up about whether you have the titles. You don't need to do like this. I can't spell. Supplies, cash. You don't need to set up like this and then hope that things align, because they don't in Canvas. They get all kludgy. So just don't even do that. Just type out debit, credit, and move on to your next journal entry. Okay. All right. All right. Next question. October 9th, provided medical services of 3,400 and billed insurance companies. Now, I didn't have you do something, but I'm going to back up. Anusha asked, is it okay if we just write supplies, or would you want us to write down medical supplies? Supplies is just fine. Okay. All right. Juana Chavez opened a doctor's office as a corporation. So it's important to kind of step back from the problem and get a sense of what kind of business this is. It's going to be a service business because that's what we're learning about in chapters 1 through 3, but it's just good to know. All right, so then October 9th, provided medical services of $3,400 and billed insurance companies. So, oh, I forgot to put the date here. I messed up. That was me. Okay, so that would have been October, go back to the October 6th. Okay, so now let's do October 9/21. Can you guys give me this journal entry? Take about 30 seconds and then give me the journal entry. Kanwar Beer, that's correct. Elliot, that is correct. Yay, yay, yay. Yeah, oh, Kanwar Beer, add a date when you do it for the exam. Okay, so that looks great. So this is what, so you can see he didn't indent it because you can't in Zoom. This is from Elliot, but just when you're doing it for the test, give it a little indent, and that looks just great. Okay. All right, next one, provide the secretary's weekly wage in cash. Of course, we'd never, Tara, that's debit. You got the debit right. Now we just need a debit. Now we just need a credit. Pay the secretary's weekly wage in cash. This, you'd never pay anybody in cash. I mean, people do, but it's pretty rare. So, but let's go ahead. Now you notice there's no description of how much they get paid because we've already told you how much they get paid. So take a minute and see if you can do that one. So how much is the secretary being paid? you have to look up to a previous problem, and that is $7.50 a week. Okay, so we know the dollar amount. So what's the journal entry when we pay somebody? Anusha, yes, you are correct. Anybody else? Tara, you are correct. Now, we've called it a wage here. So you could argue that it should be wage expense. I always play it safe and call it salary and wage expense just to, you know, make it even cover both of those. So it's going to be a debit, salary, wage, expense, $7.50, credit, cash, $7.50. Okay. All right. Provided medical services of $6.80 and was paid in cash. What's that journal look like? So here's another thing. Here's another tip. If you see the words paid, you know cash is involved. Okay. So up here, hired, paid, purchased, you don't know if cash is involved, but then they have to tell you. Okay. So down October 17th. And provided medical services and was paid in cash. So give me that journal entry. So we're doing October 17th. So is cash debited or credited? Yes, that's great. Okay, so debit, spell, cash, $6.80, credit, service revenue, that's $6.80. And pay for the rest of supplies. So what's that journal entry? Paid for the remainder of the supplies purchased on the 6th. So there's that word paid again, which means cash is involved. Oh, Anusha, don't make them negative. Always, the journal entries are always positive. So paid for the remainder of the supplies. Yes. And how much do we owe on the supplies? We owe 1,600. So what are we going to debit? So when we pay, when we debit accounts payable, when we debit accounts payable, is that increasing accounts payable or decreasing accounts payable? Do we still owe the money, or are we paying off the borrowed money? Yeah, Tara, yes, Anusha, good. So we're decreasing accounts payable since we're paying off the money, good. Okay. October 21st, received 1,100 in advance of a medical procedure. So if somebody needs to, I don't know what kind of a doctor she is, maybe they're getting their tonsils out or something, and you have to pay ahead of time. So the patient is paying in advance $1,100. So what accounts are involved? What's the journal entry? When we receive money, what account is involved? So I'm looking in the chat. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, Anusha. Thanks for clarifying. Okay, so the client prepaid us we received $1,100. We received it. Juana received it. So it has to be cash. She received this money. But she didn't perform the service yet. She still owes the patient the surgery. So that's when we use unearned revenue. Good, I see. All right. October 23rd. October 23rd. Let's see if we can. Billed $80 to a student who will pay in 3 days. That's misleading. It should be a patient who will pay in 3 days. So if you got confused by that. Okay, Anusha, great question. I'm going to share your question. Going back to the previous problem, received $1,100 in advance of a medical procedure to be performed. So Juana is not paying in advance. Her customer is paying in advance. Okay, so Juana is receiving $1,100. So her cash goes up. And she's going to perform a medical operation in a few days. So she owes the patient that surgery or that procedure. So she can't call it revenue yet. She hasn't earned it yet. So that's the whole principle of unearned revenue. If one of our customers prepays us, we debit cash, cash goes up, but we can't call it service revenue because we haven't performed the service yet. This is a liability. And in chapter 4, you're going to see how after we perform the service, we make an adjusting entry and take that money out of the liability and credit it to service revenue. All right. So I want you to substitute the word patient. Billed $80 to a patient who will pay in 3 days. Okay. So you're billing them. They haven't paid yet. They owe you money. So it's going to be accounts receivable. And it's going to be $80. And it's going to be service revenue. Right. Last one, received an electric bill for $50 for the prior month's rent. Sorry, for the prior month's service. So this is our last one. We're just about out of time. And note here in your exam, I give you a list of accounts to use as well. And I didn't give you medical supplies. I just gave you supplies. Okay. So received an electric bill for $50. Does she make is this a transaction or is this not a transaction? Does Juana owe the money? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Do we make a journal entry for this one? And this is kind of the hard part of accounting is when do you make a journal entry and when do you not make a journal entry? So the question is, has the company benefited from this electric bill? Have they used the electricity? And the answer is yes. And you guys are putting that in the chat, so that's good. So it's going to be that we have to recognize the expense of $50 and we haven't paid it yet. So we're going to credit accounts payable. Yeah. And you got the date in there. Beautiful. Okay. All right. So let's go back to page 1. I know we're running over just a few minutes. So if you need to go, go ahead and go. So we talked about, let me share the page 1 here. Okay. Be able to write an essay. We talked about that. Be able to do account identification, find the missing number. We practiced that. Be able to do a trial balance, the worksheet, journal entries, all the financial statements, but except not cash flow. And then use you can go back and do your practice homework, your chapter questions at the end of your textbook. Each chapter has questions with solutions. And then they also have short exercises. Each chapter has multiple choice with solutions also. And they're kind of nice because they give you quick feedback. Okay. All right. So I think based on what you guys did for Monopoly, I feel like you did pretty well. So you understand journal entries, T accounts, all of that. And just be able to do that in the test situation. So I think the hardest part about the test is you don't have unlimited time. Okay, so that's the only thing. Any last questions before we sign off? Super glad you came. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.